Hey everyone, before we dive into this story, please consider subscribing to my channel for more content like this. A soft knock echoed through the quiet afternoon, the lake outside shimmering calmly beneath a faint winter sky, with bare birches standing guard along the yard's edge. I swung the door open to see my father on the porch, his posture confident, as if he carried welcome news. The sharp scent of his cologne, jarring in the crisp air, sliced through the faint wood smoke curling from my fireplace. He stepped inside uninvited, his hands betraying a slight tremor as he reached into his coat. With a dramatic gesture, he placed an envelope on my kitchen table as if offering a grand prize. A cashier's check slipped out, its clean print declaring $12,000. "There you go," he said, settling into the chair opposite me. "Enough to start fresh. You could find a spot in Portland, maybe even Boston. The cottage is off your hands now, a $3 million cash deal." It was the right move. My gaze stayed fixed on the check, my fingers brushing the steel, key hanging from a cord around my neck. A key that unlocked nothing now, but held every memory. "You sold the cottage," I said, my voice even. "You've been too swamped to deal with it," he replied smoothly, his tone wrapped in logic. "I spared you the burden of managing it." I let him speak, his words filling the silence he mistook for surrender. What he didn't know was that I had already reshaped the story's end. This tale didn't begin with that check on my table. It started years earlier, in the winter my mother passed when I was 24, standing in a Rockland courthouse as a probate judge finalized papers that shifted my world. The cottage, nestled by a tranquil lake in mid-coast Maine, became mine, not by my choice, but through my mother's unyielding will. My father was already restless then, chasing fleeting schemes and whispers of fast cash. The cottage held no value for him beyond what it could fetch, a figure in his tally of grudges. I stayed because someone had to. The place was crumbling, shingles warped like brittle leaves, windows stuck with decay, floors sagging where water seeped through neglected cracks. By day, I worked in Camden, hauling timber and crunching numbers, then returned at night to peel away old wallpaper, reinforce beams, and sand floors until my hands were raw. Each fixed board was a quiet talk with my mother, each restored window a vow I wouldn't break. I could still see her on the granite steps by the lake, a blanket draped over her shoulders, watching the light dance across the water. She never said the cottage was meant to anchor me, but her name on the deed felt like a gift of something unshakable, immune to gambles or debts. My father saw it differently. His calls came regularly over the years, asking for bridge loans, money for truck repairs, or help with late mortgage payments on a Belfast house he swore he'd flip. The sums grew. $500 turned into $2,000, then $5,000. I agreed too often, telling myself it was family obligation, believing I could stave off chaos by controlling the funds. But control came at a price. Every dollar I sent deepened my silence, a refusal to question why he needed so much or demand promises he'd never keep. I became the pillar he leaned on, even as his weight wore me down. Then Owen called, his voice heavy with reluctance, as if he wished he could stay silent. He'd been at a Rockport Marina bar, half hearing the chatter over cheap whiskey, when my father's voice broke through. Ronan was boasting to anyone listening that the lake house would be sold by week's end, a deal already sealed, money practically in hand. Owen hesitated, then shared what made my chest tighten. My father had laughed, saying I was too naive to notice a signature slipped past me. That laughter, even secondhand, cut deep. By dawn, I was in Claire Lennon's Rockland office, ready to draw a line he couldn't cross. Claire, recommended years ago, but never needed until now, greeted me with a calm that steadied my nerves. I recounted everything. The debts, the check on my table, Owen's warning from the bar. Her pen moved swiftly across a legal pad, her focus unbroken. When I finished, she leaned forward and explained. A forged power of attorney was already in play. Without action, the county could record a deed before I even knew. My hands trembled as I signed the first paper. Claire drafted documents to place the cottage in an irrevocable trust, naming me as lifetime beneficiary and trustee. Each signature felt like etching my name into bedrock. This was no longer just a legacy, it was a shield. She also prepared a fraud alert affidavit for the Knox County Registry of Deeds, a safeguard that would flag any forged filing. I left her office into the sharp Rockland air, a new certainty wrapping around me like a mantle. But certainty demanded vigilance. I installed discreet cameras around the cottage, above the doorway, in the kitchen rafters, in the office where my father liked to scatter papers. Their tiny red lights blinked only for me, quiet signals of my resolve. Claire arranged for a Portland handwriting expert to compare my saved documents, old tax forms, my mother's will, insurance letters, against the forged power of attorney. The differences were stark, loops too shallow, pressure uneven, a signature crafted by someone who thought mimicry could replace familiarity. Meanwhile, Claire traced the buyer's bank activity, leading to a man I remembered from childhood barbecues, one of my father's poker buddies from Warren. The money moved in restless patterns, small deposits, quick withdrawals, then nothing, a shell game unraveling before it could hold. Marta Blair at the registry called Claire one evening, her voice steady. She'd flagged a hastily submitted packet, signatures that didn't sit right. She assured us they wouldn't slip through. In her quiet resolve, I felt the strength of an ally no money could sway. Owen offered to help with the cameras, or just keep me company through the wait, but I declined. Control felt safer than companionship, and I convinced myself I had to manage every piece alone. His disappointment lingered in my mind, but I couldn't let anyone near the edges of my plan. The Summit Grill overlooked Rockland's waterfront, its glass windows framing the breakwater light against a fading sky. My father had chosen it with the flair of a man savoring triumph. When I arrived, he was already seated, a wine bottle chilling, menus arranged like stage props. "Sit, Sable," he said warmly. "This is a night for farewells and fresh starts. You'll see." I sat, smoothing the napkin across my lap, hiding the tremor inside. He poured 2 glasses of wine, raising his in a toast. "To your freedom," he declared. "No more carrying that place alone. I've lifted that weight." I let my glass clink against his but didn't drink, a quiet defiance he overlooked. He leaned back, his face glowing with satisfaction. "You should thank me. 3 million's a fair price. I've secured our future, and that $12,000 ensures you land softly." His words chilled me. He wanted gratitude for cutting me out of my own story. I offered a faint smile, which he read as capitulation. The waiter brought our dishes, moving silently as the lighthouse blinked steadily outside. Halfway through the meal, Claire entered, feigning surprise when she saw me and asking to join. My father's eyebrows lifted, but he waved her to the empty chair, still believing he held all the cards. As plates were cleared, he spoke more freely, perhaps loosened by the wine. His voice softened, tinged with something raw. "You know, Sable, your mother always favored you, even in her will. That house should have been mine. I built the dock, fixed the roof, paid taxes when she couldn't. But the judge handed it to you, like I was nothing." I watched him closely, seeing the old wound that fueled his schemes. He hadn't just sold the cottage. He was trying to erase the slight he felt my mother left behind. Claire caught my eye, her nod subtle. The facade was cracking. "Ronan," Claire said casually. "I stopped by the registry this week. Curious timing on some filings under your name." His fork froze. "What filings?" She slid a folder across the table, revealing trust documents stamped 3 days before his visit to my cottage. The cottage is locked in an irrevocable trust, with Sable as beneficiary. Any deed you file is worthless. His face darkened as he flipped through the pages, as if sheer will could undo them. "You can't do this," he snapped. "I had a buyer." Claire's tone stayed even. "That buyer's tied to a shell account in Warren, linked to your poker friend. No funds cleared escrow. Misrepresenting that is fraud." He slammed the folder shut. "I poured years into that place, paid bills when your mother couldn't. Sable owes me." The word stung, but I held steady. "I don't owe you theft," I said. He leaned closer, his voice low, desperate. "You don't get it. I'm drowning. Thomas and lenders are on me, and I can't walk the harbor without a reminder of my debts. Selling was my way out." Claire's gaze sharpened. "And forging a signature? Exploiting your daughter? That's document fraud, theft by deception, and financial exploitation under Maine law." The DA could file charges tomorrow. For a moment, his bravado faded, his eyes flicking to the lighthouse's steady pulse. Then he rallied, defiant. What now? You'll have me arrested? Not yet, Claire replied. But your exposure is real, and the clock's ticking. The next morning, I returned to Claire's office, the tide low along Rockland's shore. The folder from dinner lay open, marked with yellow tabs. Claire asked what I wanted, her eyes searching for my limits. I don't want this buried, I said, but I'd rather avoid seeing him in jail if there's another path. She nodded, drafting a civil action to maintain leverage, alongside a restitution plan. Ronan would repay what he could, attend financial counseling, and sign a covenant barring him from contacting me about the cottage or tampering with the trust. Any violation would trigger civil and criminal consequences. Over coffee in Camden, I explained this to Owen, who frowned. This will break him. He'll say we're ruining him, not helping. I met my cousin's gaze, tired of the tightrope. Maybe it's both. I can't ignore what he tried to steal, but I know what it means to prosecute your own father. The words tasted bitter. I feared public shame, feared irreversible damage, but silence would only invite another betrayal. Owen nodded slowly. If this protects you, I'm with you. It was a fragile piece, steadying me as I reshaped my life's locks. At the cottage, I replaced the locks, new hardware shining against weathered pine. Each turn of the wrench a reminder that control could be tangible. I walked the shoreline, noting where erosion crept closer, and under Maine's guidelines, I set up stone buffers and native plants, a quiet stand against forces older than family disputes. Inside, I hung 2 frames above the mantel, my mother's yellowed deed, her script still clear, and the crisp trust certificate, proof the cottage's story outlasted betrayal. They spoke of endurance. Ronan tried to slip through, calling Owen with familiar pleas about family loyalty, claiming I'd been turned against him. Owen listened but held firm, directing him to Claire. Hearing that brought relief so sharp it bordered on grief. At my next meeting with Claire, I admitted what I'd kept buried. The tighter I lock things down, the more alone I feel. I think if I control every detail, nothing can hurt me, but it leaves no space for anyone else. Claire closed the files softly. Safety's vital, she said, but walls can become cages if you never let anyone in. Her words stayed with me, lingering into late summer as Camden buzzed with tourists, its markets brimming with blueberries and honey, Harbor Park alive with music. The town seemed untouched by battles like mine. Ronan began restitution under Claire's watch, small $300 payments every 2 weeks from his boat repair work in Owl's Head, always on time. I kept each receipt, not for vengeance, but because records outlasted promises. I needed my own act of healing beyond family ties. So, I created a small grant through a local land trust to help homeowners fight deed fraud. Applications arrived quickly. Stories of questioned signatures, coerced neighbors, manipulated elders. For the first time, my vigilance built something not just guarded against loss. Then came a letter in Ronan's plain handwriting. No apologies, just a request to see the cottage one last time from the road. I read it on the granite steps where my mother once sat, the lake stretching before me. The request was small against the harm done, yet it stirred something complex. After days of thought, I allowed it one supervised visit from the gravel shoulder. When he came, he stayed back, gazing at the roof, the chimney, the birches swaying in the breeze. His face gave nothing away, but his silence felt like the closest thing to respect he'd ever shown. By September, I knew the future lay in boundaries, not deals. A year passed in steady steps. Claire's updates logged Ronan's partial compliance, small payments, counseling sessions. It didn't erase his actions, but it built a rhythm of accountability I could accept. I crafted a shadow box for the mantel, holding 3 items: the steel key I'd worn, the trust certificate with Claire's stamp, and a photo my mother took of the cottage the summer before she died. Together, they told a story of what was nearly lost and what I'd reclaimed. I stepped back, studying the display. The key no longer needed to hang against my skin. It belonged behind glass, both relic and promise. Outside, the birches danced, and the lake gleamed like a mirror. My father's shadow lingered somewhere beyond the gate, but he no longer stood inside. That line was mine to hold, and I would.